Two 6-year-old twins were found walking barefoot along a rural highway just before dawn, wearing only pajamas and whispering the same phrase, "Mom's still inside the fence." At first, police assumed they had run away from home, but their house was empty and undisturbed. Behind the property lay an old decommissioned military facility, sealed off by barbed wire. The surveillance footage from that night was never released to the public. At 4:42 a.m., long-haul trucker Darren Haskell was driving southbound on Route 19, a narrow 2-lane stretch cutting through a remote part of Jefferson County, Mississippi. The road was empty except for fog and tree shadows until Darren spotted something small moving along the shoulder. At first he thought it was a dog, then two. When he slowed, his headlights caught the shape of two children walking barefoot on the gravel, holding hands. They were wearing matching pajama sets, light blue with faded cartoon prints. He stopped immediately and called 911. Sheriff's deputies arrived 11 minutes later. The boy and girl appeared to be around 6 years old. They were pale, thin, their feet scraped and bleeding from walking on broken pavement and rough grass. They didn't cry. They didn't scream. They answered every question with a whisper. When asked their names, they said nothing. When asked where they lived, they pointed in the direction they came from, but didn't speak. The only words they repeated were, "Mom's still inside the fence." The children were wrapped in blankets and taken to the county clinic. Paramedics noted mild dehydration, light bruising on their arms and shoulders, and embedded dirt under their fingernails and toes. They had no identifying documents, no backpacks, no shoes. The boy had a medical bracelet on his wrist, but the writing was too smudged to read clearly. The clinic staff contacted the Department of Human Services and prepared the twins for temporary placement. Meanwhile, deputies followed the direction the children had pointed. The nearest residence was 1.8 miles away, a modest, rented farmhouse at the end of a gravel road. The mailbox read E. Laird. A quick check of county records confirmed the name Erin Laird, single mother of 2. No previous incidents, no open investigations. According to her employer, she had taken the day off. According to neighbors, she had lived quietly for about 8 months. The door to the house was unlocked. Nothing inside suggested panic or flight. No blood, no signs of a break-in. A pot of coffee sat on the counter, half prepared. 2 small bowls of cereal were still on the kitchen table. On the back porch, a section of the wooden fence was broken clean through. Beyond it lay a narrow trail into the woods, one that led directly to federal land. Deputies entered the Laird residence at 6:07 a.m. The interior was still and quiet. A faint smell of coffee lingered in the air. The lights were off, but the hallway lamp had been left on. The living room showed no signs of disturbance. Cushions were in place. The television was off. A pair of house slippers sat neatly by the sofa. The kitchen table had 2 small cereal bowls set out with spoons. Milk had pooled in both, now slightly congealed. On the counter sat a coffee pot, still half full. A mug was beside it, empty. Erin Laird's purse was on the dining chair. Inside were her wallet, keys, and a cell phone with a dead battery. A calendar on the fridge had a doctor's appointment circled for the upcoming Friday. The kids' drawings were stuck to the freezer with magnets. The twins' bedroom was tidy. Beds unmade. Stuffed animals stacked in a corner. A tablet was charging by the window. Everything in the house suggested an ordinary morning interrupted too early. Deputies canvassed the property. No forced entry, no signs of a vehicle departure. Erin's car was still parked in the driveway. One rear tire was slightly flat. The backyard was small and fenced. On the far side, one section of the wooden panels had collapsed outward, as if something pushed through. Behind the fence was a steep slope leading into dense woods. A path had formed along the tree line, overgrown but recently disturbed. Boot prints, small and adult-sized, were visible in the dirt. The trail continued into federally owned land, marked by rusted warning signs nailed to trees. A chain-link barrier ran across the access point, sagging in the middle. Barbed wire lined the top. The signage read, "Property of U.S. Government. No trespassing. Site closed." Beyond the fence stood the remains of an old facility, concrete buildings, now windowless and tagged with graffiti. According to archived records, the compound had been decommissioned in 1994. It was a Cold War-era military communications site known as Westleaf Relay Station. No active permits, no known tenants. Deputies stopped at the fence. There were no cameras visible, no power running to the gate. But a fresh break in the chain showed that someone had passed through recently. The trail of prints continued beyond the wire. The children had said, "Mom's still inside the fence." Deputies called it in. The call was logged. No further steps were authorized that day. The following afternoon, a man named Russell Granger came forward. He owned a hunting lease that bordered the western edge of the decommissioned military land. For the past 3 months, he had been using motion-activated cameras to monitor deer activity near the fence line. After seeing a local news story about the twins, he reviewed footage from the night of their disappearance. One camera placed roughly 70 yards from the fence had recorded a sequence between 3:12 and 3:20 a.m. At 3:14 a.m., the camera captured a woman walking through the tree line barefoot, holding a flashlight. Her robe was open at the bottom, swinging in the wind. Behind her, 2 small children followed, matching pajamas, no shoes. The woman turned to them at the edge of the chain-link fence. She knelt down, said something, and pointed back toward the woods. The children hesitated, then turned and walked back the way they came. The woman then stood, stepped through the torn section of fence, and disappeared into the shadows of the trees. She never looked back. Granger brought the SD card to the sheriff's department. Investigators verified that the woman was Erin Laird. The children were her twins. The footage aligned with the timeline established by when the trucker found them. According to the digital timestamp, Erin had entered federal property at 3:18 a.m. No other motion was captured for the rest of the night. No one followed her. No vehicle headlights. No alarms. The buildings in the distance remained still. Detectives contacted the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Defense to confirm the site's current status. Officially, Westleaf Relay Station had been sealed since 1994 and was under minimal monitoring for environmental compliance. No internal surveillance systems were active. The last structural inspection had taken place in 2009. Requests for an emergency search were submitted through interagency channels but delayed by jurisdictional issues. Meanwhile, the footage was reviewed multiple times by local authorities. One frame, captured at 3:19:42, showed Erin pausing briefly after passing through the fence. Her face was turned toward the camera. Her mouth was slightly open. Her eyes were wide. Some described the expression as fear. Others said it looked like recognition. Less than 2 seconds later, she vanished from view. The camera picked up nothing else that night. Erin never emerged. The children's story remained the same. "She went in. She told us not to follow." The twins were placed into temporary protective custody under the care of Child Services. A trauma specialist was assigned to conduct interviews over the following week. The boy, Caleb, remained mostly silent. The girl, Mara, spoke only in fragments. Both repeated the same key detail during separate sessions without prompting. Their mother had heard something in the woods, a voice. They said it called her name more than once, and she followed it. When asked to describe the voice, Mara said it sounded like someone crying, but not a person she knew. Caleb refused to answer. The therapist asked what happened at the fence. Mara said their mother told them to stay outside no matter what. She walked through the broken section alone. Mara said they waited, but something felt wrong, and they decided to leave. When asked what they saw beyond the fence, Caleb said nothing. Mara said, "A light underground." The drawings she made later showed a square building with no windows and several stick figures around it. None of the figures had faces. The sheriff's department continued requesting access to the federal compound. After 3 days, the request was denied. The reason given was environmental hazard risk and lack of current operational authority. Deputies were not allowed to enter without coordination from federal personnel. No search was scheduled. The Laird case remained open but stalled. No new leads emerged. Aaron's phone remained locked. Forensic experts recovered only standard activity logs. No outgoing calls or unusual messages in the final 24 hours. Location data ended abruptly at 2:57 a.m., placing her still inside the house. Her last known online activity was opening a weather app. Her social media accounts were inactive. No financial transactions followed her disappearance. 6 weeks later, a new fence was installed behind the property. Taller, reinforced. Signs were added along the perimeter. U.S. government property. No entry. Surveillance in use. Whether cameras had actually been installed remained unconfirmed. The old broken fence was removed completely. Satellite images of the compound were blurred on most public platforms. Caleb and Mara were relocated out of state to extended family. Their current location is sealed by court order. Neither has spoken publicly since. The last confirmed words either of them gave to investigators were identical and spoken in unison. "She's still in there. She didn't scream."